The transport ship cut across the black sky like a silver blade. Inside, a single human sat in silence. His name was Daniel Hayes. He was an observer, trained to watch and record without interfering. For weeks, he had been prepared for this mission. Yet now, as the ship lowered through the clouds of the alien world, a weight pressed heavy on his chest. He repeated the orders in his mind. Assign to the nest. Record daily behavior. Do not interfere. Do not get involved. The words felt simple when read on paper. But nothing about the alien species known as the Sarin was simple. The ship touched down in a valley filled with glowing stone. Blue crystals rose from the ground like sharp towers, and the air hummed with quiet energy. Daniel stepped outside, his boots sinking slightly into the soft soil. The scent of wild flowers filled the air, mixed with something sharper, almost metallic. 2 Sarin warriors approached him. They were tall, their skin a faint silver that glimmered in the light. Their eyes were bright, like liquid fire. They did not speak to him, but only motioned for him to follow. He did so, keeping his steps steady, though his heart raced. At the edge of the valley stood the nest. It was larger than he expected. A vast structure woven from living roots and crystal branches, pulsing faintly as if the entire place breathed. It looked less like a building and more like a living creature that had grown to welcome its occupants. Inside, shadows moved. Watching. Waiting. Daniel swallowed hard. He was here to observe, not to become part of their lives. That was what he told himself. But he felt a gaze before he even entered the nest. A gaze so sharp and so direct that it made him pause. She was waiting for him. The female warrior stood at the entrance, taller than him by at least a head. Her body was strong, her arms scarred from battle, yet her face carried a strange beauty. Her eyes were wide and filled with fire. Her long dark hair was braided with crystal beads that shimmered with each movement. She did not look at him like a stranger. She looked at him like he already belonged to her. "This is my nest," she said in a voice that was deep but steady. "You will stay here." Daniel nodded, trying to keep his voice calm. "Yes. I am here only to observe. Nothing more." But his words seemed to strike her in a different way. Her lips curved into something close to a smile. A dangerous, knowing smile. She turned, walking inside. Her steps were slow, deliberate, as though every movement was part of a ritual. Daniel followed, uncertain. The air inside was warm and heavy. The walls glowed faintly, casting light across the figures of others who stood in the shadows. Dozens of eyes followed him, unblinking, as if judging his every move. She gestured to a low stone seat carved into the nest. "Sit. You have come to begin." Daniel sat, his recorder hidden inside his sleeve, already writing down details in silent code. He noted the structure, the behavior, the ritualistic movement. But his notes grew less certain as she stepped closer. The female warrior knelt in front of him, her eyes fixed on his face. She touched his wrist gently, and for a moment he froze. Her fingers were warm, her grip firm, as though claiming him. "You do not fear me," she said softly. It was not a question. "I am here to study," Daniel replied carefully. Her smile deepened. "Then you accept?" The words unsettled him. Accept what? He wanted to ask, but the crowd around them shifted, murmuring in low tones. It felt like the nest itself was leaning closer, watching. He tried again. "I am only here to observe your customs. That is all." But she heard something else. Her eyes brightened with a light that made his stomach twist. She stood tall and turned to the shadows. Her voice rang out, strong and clear. "He has chosen. The ritual begins." The nest echoed with low chants, voices rising in rhythm. The air vibrated as if the crystals in the walls joined in the song. Daniel's heart pounded. He wanted to correct her, to explain, but the weight of so many eyes froze him in place. The female warrior moved closer once more, her breath brushing against his ear as she whispered, "From this night you are mine." Daniel sat rigid, his thoughts clashing in panic and disbelief. To her, his arrival was not an assignment. To her, This was no study. This was a binding. A ritual of union. He had not come to interfere. He had not come to belong. Yet as her hand rested against his arm, and the chanting of the clan filled the nest, Daniel realized one terrible truth. To them, he was no observer. He was a mate. And the ritual had already begun. Daniel woke to the soft hum of the nest. The walls glowed faintly, breathing with light like the inside of a living heart. For a moment, he forgot where he was. Then he saw her. The female warrior stood at the edge of the chamber, watching him closely. She was sharpening a long blade, its edge catching the light. Her movements were calm, but her eyes never left his face. "You wake in my nest," she said. Daniel sat up quickly, pulling his small recorder closer to his side. "Yes. I am here to observe." He tried to keep his voice steady. "That is all." She tilted her head as if his words amused her. "You are strange. You resist, but you do not leave. That is the game of the ritual." Daniel froze. Again, she had twisted his meaning. He was speaking of science, but she heard only courtship. He cleared his throat. "Listen. I am here to study. To watch. To learn about your people." Her eyes narrowed. "You bring gifts. You bring strange tools. You bring your time. That is what mates do. They give themselves." Daniel held up his recorder, trying to explain. "This is not a gift. It is only for study. For knowledge." But the more he explained, the more certain she became. Her smile softened, almost tender. "You hide your heart behind your words. But the nest knows. I know. You are mine." The room shifted as other figures appeared from the shadows. Younger Saren warriors gathered at the edges of the chamber, whispering to one another. Their voices carried excitement, like children watching a sacred event. One of them laughed softly and said, "The ritual has begun. He is shy, but he will learn." Daniel felt his pulse climb higher. He wanted to argue, to shout that this was all a mistake. But every time he opened his mouth, his words grew tangled in their language. To them, his refusal was not rejection. It was part of the game. Resistance was seen as proof of interest. The female warrior stepped closer. She placed a plate of food before him. Strange fruits that glowed faintly, and meat roasted over crystal fire. He hesitated. She pushed the plate closer. "Eat. It is my offering. If you take it, you accept me." Daniel's hands trembled. If he refused, would they see it as an insult? If he accepted, would it bind him deeper into this ritual? He stared at the food, then at her eyes. They burned with both strength and vulnerability. She wanted him to eat. Not as a soldier. Not as a scientist. But as her chosen one. He took a slow bite. The flavor was sharp and sweet, strange but not unpleasant. The nest grew quiet. The watching warriors leaned closer, waiting. The female's lips curved into a smile of victory. "He eats. He accepts." The chamber erupted in low chants once more. Their voices shook the crystals in the walls, filling the air with living music. Daniel felt his stomach twist. He had only taken a bite of food, yet to them, it was sacred. To them, he had agreed to something far greater. When the chanting ended, she leaned closer, her voice softer now. "Do not fear. I will teach you our ways. You will learn to fight at my side. You will learn to share my heart." Daniel wanted to protest again, but the warmth of her tones silenced him. For the first time, he saw something more in her eyes. Not only ritual. Not only duty. There was loneliness there, buried beneath her fierce pride. He realized then that this misunderstanding was not simple. She did not see him as a mistake. She saw him as hope. And in that moment, Daniel feared the truth. He was not only trapped by duty. He was trapped by her. The night came slowly to the valley. The crystals outside the nest glowed brighter as darkness spread across the alien sky. Daniel sat on the stone seat, watching the colors shift from blue to silver. The air inside the nest felt warmer now, almost heavy, as though the walls themselves were alive. The female warrior returned carrying food again. This time it was a bowl filled with glowing fruit and pieces of roasted meat. She placed it gently before him, her movements slower, softer than before. "You must eat," she said. "Strength is needed for the ritual." Daniel looked at the bowl, then at her. "I told you. This is not a ritual for me. I am only here to watch and record." Her eyes softened, but she shook her head. "You speak as if your words can break what has already begun." She sat down beside him. For a moment, the room grew quiet. The fire from the crystals flickered across her skin, giving her an almost unreal glow. Daniel tried not to stare, but he could feel her presence pressing close, strong yet strangely comforting. He cleared his throat. "Your people, they believe this is something sacred. But where I come from, it is different. We do not bond in this way." She tilted her head, studying him. "Then your people are colder than stone. To us, the nest is life. A mate is more than family. It is the soul you fight beside, the one you protect until death." Her words carried weight, like something carved in stone. Daniel found himself lowering his eyes. He had been trained not to interfere, not to let emotions guide him. Yet every word she spoke stirred something inside him. When she noticed his silence, she leaned a little closer. "Do not fear. You will understand in time. Even if you resist, the heart will learn." Daniel forced himself to focus. He pulled out his recorder and began to speak into it in a low voice. "The Saren continue to display cultural misunderstandings. They see my presence as symbolic. They treat my tools as ritual objects. Subject shows strong attachment to the idea of a bond." The female's eyes followed the device. She reached out and touched it gently, as though it were a fragile treasure. "This is your gift. You offer it to me. I will guard it as part of us." He almost laughed, but the sound caught in his throat. She believed every word. To her, his recorder was not just metal and light. It was a promise. Later that night, the nest grew quieter. The younger warriors who had been watching faded back into their chambers. Only the soft hum of the crystal walls remained. The female spread a blanket of woven fibers across the floor. She sat beside it and motioned for him to join her. Daniel hesitated. "I should not. This is your space." "This is our space," she corrected. "The first night is important. It is when trust begins." He sat down slowly, keeping a small distance between them. She did not press closer. Instead, she leaned back against the glowing wall and let out a slow breath. For the first time, she seemed less like a warrior and more like a woman carrying heavy memories. After a long silence, she spoke quietly. "I lost my first mate. He fell in battle when the sky burned with fire. Since then, the nest has been empty. A warrior without a mate is strong, but never whole. When you came, I thought the nest had given me another chance." Her words cut into him deeper than he expected. Daniel felt his chest tighten. He wanted to tell her the truth again, but he could not bring himself to break that fragile look in her eyes. Instead, he asked softly, "Is that why you believe I was sent here? To fill that emptiness?" She turned her gaze to him, her eyes shining with quiet fire. "Not belief. Certainty. You came. You stayed. The nest does not make mistakes." The silence that followed was heavy, filled with emotions Daniel could not name. He looked at her, at the strength in her shoulders, at the sadness in her voice, and for the first time, he wondered if he was the one who misunderstood. The nest seemed to breathe around them, the crystals glowing brighter, as if the living walls themselves approved. Daniel lay back against the blanket, staring up at the shifting lights. His orders echoed in his mind. "Do not interfere. Do not get involved." But her hand brushed against his, light as a whisper, and he felt his heart betray him. That night, as the hum of the nest sang softly in the air, Daniel realized something dangerous. He was no longer only an observer. He was becoming part of her story. The sun rose slowly over the valley, its light bouncing off the crystals and flooding the nest with silver fire. Daniel woke to the sound of voices outside. Dozens of Saren warriors had gathered, their armor flashing in the morning light. They spoke in deep tones, their words carrying weight, their eyes fixed on him. The female warrior stood tall beside him, her spear resting against her shoulder. "Today, the test begins," she said. Daniel frowned. "What test?" She looked at him with steady eyes. "The clan cannot accept you unless you prove yourself. Words are not enough. A mate must fight, protect, and show he is worthy of the nest." Daniel's chest tightened. He was no soldier. His training was in science, not war. He had survived harsh missions, yes, but never as a warrior. "This is a mistake. I am not here for this." The female only tilted her head, her expression unreadable. "It is no mistake. The nest chose. You cannot refuse." The crowd outside parted, and an elder Saren stepped forward. His voice was deep and powerful. "The test is simple. Protect the nest. Protect her." Before Daniel could speak, a horn sounded across the valley. From the shadows of the cliffs, creatures stirred. Their bodies were twisted, their skin dark and rough like stone. They crawled forward with glowing eyes, jaws lined with sharp teeth. Daniel froze. His pulse thundered in his ears. "What are those?" The female's voice was calm. "Raiders. Beasts who seek to break our walls. They come every season. Today, you will fight with me." Daniel's instincts screamed at him to run. But the clan was watching. Their chants rose around him, calling for strength, calling for courage. The female placed a spear in his hand. The weapon felt heavy, the crystal edge sharp. She looked into his eyes. "Stand beside me. Do not fear. If you fall, I will rise with you. If you rise, then you are truly mine." The creatures charged. The ground shook beneath their weight. Daniel gripped the spear tighter, his throat dry. The first beast leapt toward him, jaws wide. At the last second, he thrust the weapon forward. The spear struck its chest, and the beast collapsed with a howl. The crowd roared in approval. The female let out a fierce cry and struck another beast with her blade, crystal shards flying through the air. Daniel moved clumsily, but his fear drove him forward. Every strike was desperate, every step a fight to stay alive. Yet each time he faltered, she was there, her blade flashing to guard him. Together they pushed back the creatures, until the last one fell, broken and silent on the ground. The valley grew still again, filled only with the sound of heavy breathing. Daniel dropped the spear, his arms trembling. His chest burned with exhaustion, but his heart raced with something else. A strange mix of relief and pride. The female warrior stepped close to him, her face glowing with sweat and fire. She placed her hand against his chest, over his pounding heart. "You fought. You did not run. The nest sees. I see." The clan roared with approval. Their voices shook the crystals, filling the valley with sound. The elder raised his arms. "He has proven himself. He is bound." Daniel tried to speak, but his words failed. He wanted to tell them this was not who he was, not why he came. Yet in their eyes, the trial had already decided his fate. The female leaned closer, her voice soft against the chaos. "Now they believe. Now I believe." Her eyes held his, fierce yet tender. In that moment, Daniel felt the truth settle heavy on his shoulders. His fight was no longer about observation. His fight was about survival, about her, about the bond he could no longer deny. The test had ended. But for Daniel, the true struggle had only begun. The nest was quiet that evening. The battle had ended hours ago, but the echoes of victory still lingered outside. Fires burned low, warriors sang in deep voices, and the air carried the scent of roasted meat. Yet inside the main chamber, silence ruled. Daniel sat by the glowing wall, his body aching from the fight. His arms throbbed, his chest was sore, but his mind was restless. He had fought to survive, not to prove anything. Yet the clan had cheered his name as if he had been one of them all along. The female warrior entered, her steps light but sure. She carried a bowl of water and set it beside him. Without a word, she dipped a cloth into the bowl and began cleaning the cuts on his arms. Daniel tried to protest. You don't need to do that. I'll be fine. She looked up, her eyes steady. A mate does not leave wounds untended. If you bleed, I will heal you. If you fall, I will lift you. Her words stirred something inside him, something he could not ignore. He let her continue, the warmth of her touch gentle against his skin. For a warrior who carried herself with fire and steel, she was careful now, as if afraid of breaking him. Why do you do this? Daniel asked softly. Why treat me as something more than a stranger? She paused, her hand still resting on his arm. Her gaze grew distant, shadows moving in her eyes. Because I know what it is to be left alone. My first mate died when the skies burned. The fire took him before he could even say my name a final time. Her voice broke slightly, though her face stayed strong. Since then, my nest has been hollow. I fought battles. I stood as a warrior. But when I returned, there was no one waiting. The walls were empty. Daniel's chest tightened. He had not expected such honesty, not from someone so fierce. He searched for the right words, but none seemed enough. She leaned closer, her voice lower now. When you came, I thought the nest had given me a second chance. Not by accident. By fate. Do you not see? You came when my heart was ready to be whole again. Daniel's throat went dry. He wanted to tell her the truth, that he had been sent only to observe, that his presence here was no gift of fate. But when he looked into her eyes, filled with both strength and pain, the words caught in his mouth. I did not know, he whispered. Her lips curved into a faint smile. You will know. In time. She finished tending his wounds and set the cloth aside. Then, to his surprise, she sat beside him on the floor. Her shoulder brushed lightly against his. Neither spoke for a long time. The hum of the nest surrounded them, soft and steady, like the heartbeat of something greater than both of them. Daniel closed his eyes for a moment. His orders repeated in his mind. Do not interfere. Do not form attachments. Yet here he was, sitting beside her, his heart betraying him with every beat. The silence broke when she whispered, almost to herself. I feared I would never feel this again. The pull. The bond. But now, I feel it stronger than ever. Daniel turned his head to look at her. Her face was calm, but her hands trembled slightly where they rested on her knees. She was not only a warrior. She was a woman carrying wounds no one else could see. And he, against all logic, wanted to be the one to heal them. Before he could speak, a sharp beep came from his wrist device. His stomach dropped. It was a transmission from his command. He tapped the screen, and words appeared in cold, metallic letters. Observer Hayes. Mission complete. Withdraw immediately. Daniel's heart sank. He stared at the message, then at the woman beside him. She was watching him, unaware of what the words meant, her eyes filled with quiet trust. He clenched his jaw. Leaving now would shatter her. Staying would mean betraying his duty. The silence stretched heavy between them. He closed the device quickly and forced a steady breath. For the first time, Daniel realized that his orders and his heart were moving in different directions. The female leaned closer, her voice a whisper against the heavy air. Do not leave me! Daniel's chest ached. He could not answer. Not yet. The night grew darker, and the glow of the crystals dimmed. But inside the nest, a different light had begun to grow. A bond that neither orders nor fear could easily break. The morning came with the sound of drums. The nest pulsed with energy, its walls glowing brighter than usual, as though the crystals themselves felt the weight of the day. Daniel stood at the edge of the chamber, staring at the silent device on his wrist. The message still burned in his mind. Withdraw immediately. He had not told her. He could not. The female warrior entered, carrying her spear, her face calm but her eyes sharp. She looked at him as though she already sensed his turmoil. You are restless. The nest hears it in your heartbeat. Daniel tried to steady his breath. I received a message. My people want me to return. Her expression hardened. Return? You would leave? I did not choose this mission, Daniel said quietly. I was sent here. To watch. To report. Not to. His voice faltered. Not to love you. Not to become part of this world. Her steps were slow but firm as she approached him. If you leave, the bond breaks. And when a bond breaks, the nest will mourn. I will mourn. Her voice grew sharper, trembling with both anger and pain. Is that what you want, human? To walk away and leave me hollow again? Daniel's heart ached. He wanted to explain that it was not his choice. That duty chained him as much as her rituals bound her. But before he could answer, the alarm horn sounded outside. The ground shook. Crystals trembled. Voices rose in shouts. Raiders. The beasts had returned, larger in number, their cries echoing across the valley. The warriors rushed to the walls of the nest, weapons ready. The elder raised his hand, his voice booming. The final test has come. They will fight together, or fall together. The female warrior turned to Daniel, her eyes blazing. Now you must choose. Will you stand at my side, or will you run to your people? Daniel's blood pounded in his ears. His orders demanded retreat. But her eyes, fierce and desperate, anchored him to the ground. He could not move. The first beast broke through the outer barrier, a monstrous figure with claws sharp as blades. It roared, shaking the nest with fury. The female charged forward, her spear flashing in the light. Daniel hesitated for only a breath before grabbing a weapon and following her. The fight was chaos. Claws slashed, spears clanged, and the air filled with the cries of battle. Daniel moved clumsily at first, but fear and determination drove him on. Every time a beast lunged for her, he was there, striking, blocking, forcing it back. Every time he stumbled, she pulled him to his feet with strength that amazed him. They fought as one. The largest beast rose from the shadows, its body towering over them, its eyes glowing like fire. The female's spear shattered against its hide. She fell back breathless, her eyes flashing with defiance. The creature raised its claws for the killing blow. Without thinking, Daniel threw himself between them. He drove his blade deep into the beast's chest. The creature let out a final roar before collapsing in a cloud of dust and blood. Silence followed. The clan stood still, watching as the massive body sank into the ground. The elder raised his arms. He chose. He is no longer an outsider. He is one of us. The female rushed to Daniel, her hands gripping his shoulders. Her eyes burned with fire and tears. You stood. You did not run. You are mine. Daniel's chest heaved, his body trembling. He looked into her eyes, seeing not only fire but trust, love, and a promise he could not break. For the first time, Daniel stopped fighting the truth. His orders were nothing compared to this moment, this bond. He whispered, his voice raw. I choose you. The nest erupted with chants, their voices rising to the sky. The crystals blazed brighter than ever, as though the living walls themselves celebrated the choice. Daniel held her close, the world around him fading into light and sound. He knew there would be consequences. His superiors would demand answers. But none of that mattered now. The choice was made. And his heart had already decided long before his words. The valley was quiet after the battle. Smoke drifted through the air, and broken bodies of the raiders lay scattered across the ground. The warriors of the nest stood in silence, their spears still raised, their eyes fixed on Daniel. He leaned heavily on his weapon, his chest rising and falling with exhaustion. Every muscle in his body ached, yet his heart beat with fierce energy. He had fought not for survival alone, but for her. The female warrior stepped forward, her face streaked with sweat and blood, but her eyes brighter than the crystals. She reached for his hand and lifted it high before the clan. He chose, she declared. Her voice rang out, strong and proud. He chose me. He chose the nest. From this day, he is bound to us. He is bound to me. The clan roared in approval. The sound thundered through the valley, echoing against the cliffs, shaking the crystals with living light. Daniel stood frozen, his hand still in hers. He had never felt so exposed, yet never so alive. He turned to her, and for the first time, allowed the truth to leave his lips. I was sent here to observe. To study. But I cannot be an observer anymore. This is no mission. This is no assignment. This is my home. The elder raised his arms. Then it is done. The nest accepts. He is no longer human alone. He is one of us. The chants rose again, filling the air with fire and joy. Warriors struck their spears against the ground in rhythm, their voices blending with the hum of the crystals. The female looked at Daniel, her hands still holding his tightly. Her voice softened so only he could hear. You gave me back what I thought was lost forever. A heart that beats beside mine. You are my strength, my bond, my mate. Daniel swallowed hard, his throat tight. He had been trained his whole life to keep distance, to never let feelings cloud his duty. Yet here, standing before her, none of that training mattered. Only she did. He lifted her hand to his chest, pressing it against his pounding heart. Then I am yours. Fully. No matter what comes. She leaned closer, her forehead touching his. In that moment, there was no war, no orders, no walls between them. Only two souls, bound across worlds, united by something greater than duty. The nest glowed brighter, as though alive with approval. The crystals pulsed in rhythm with their hearts, singing a song of unity. Daniel felt it in his bones, a truth that would never leave him. He had come as a stranger, a man with orders and walls around his heart. He now stood as part of something larger. A mate. A protector. A bridge between species. The female whispered against his ear, her voice steady but filled with emotion. From this day, you are never alone. You are mine and I am yours. Daniel closed his eyes and breathed deeply. For the first time in his life, he felt whole. He had chosen not with duty, not with fear, but with love. The story of the human and the warrior spread through the valley that night. Fires burned high, voices sang loud, and the stars above seemed brighter than ever. But within the nest, where the hum of life surrounded them, only two hearts mattered. Two souls, different by blood and world, but united by fate. And for Daniel Hayes, humanity's role in the stars had never been clearer. Not just to conquer. Not just to study. But to love.